This program is made possible through the generous support of the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, making grants to promote international understanding and address the root causes of global poverty. And now, Daljit Dhaliwal.
Welcome to a special edition of Foreign Exchange. New technology is merging the realms of television and the internet, and we hope that we can make this feature a regular part of our show. Hello everyone, I'm Daljit Dhaliwal. Behind me is an interactive website called Water Wars, which has been launched by our partners at the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting. This week we are making water, sometimes called the new oil, the focus of our show. It is a growing global issue, and it's sometimes said that the wars of this century will be fought over this precious resource. As we talk about it, we'll pull video, photos and your comments directly from the Water Wars website. We hope you'll go there yourselves for video, radio stories, newspaper coverage, and also to make your voice heard on this growing global crisis. So let's get to our first report, which is part of an extensive series. We start in the Lake Victoria region of Africa, where drought, porous borders, poverty and overcrowding are threatening one of the world's most important freshwater lakes. Afterward, we'll meet the filmmaker.
Kama wakati 2004 ilikuwa bado, tulikuwa tunapata samaki kwa wingi. Tena zilikuwa mvuta na ngege. Kudidimia kwa maji niliona. Mpaka sasa hivi bado maji yanadidimia. Na samaki pia huwa zinakuwa chache, zinaenda kwa deep ile ndefu. Sasa ndio maana huku maji yakididimia hivi sasa tunaenda kwa kule kwa deep ndefu, ndipo unapata samaki ambazo zinaweza kutosha kwa familia yako.
The dam construction on the source of the Nile in Jinja has impacted on Lake Victoria so much. Some 55% of the decline is attributed to the dam's construction at Jinja, 55%. And then the rest of the 45% could be to other causes, including climate change and excessive evaporation.
Mara nyingi umesikia kwamba watu wetu wengine wakienda kule Uganda mara wanakamatwa kulingana na kwa sababu ile ni nchi nyingine. Sasa pia ile imeleta shida kwa wavuvi. Sasa inabidi uvue sehemu yenu, ingawa sio nyingi, lakini utavua kidogo kidogo.
The fish itself doesn't know those borders. And also these fishermen you see, they don't know the borders because most of them, they don't have the compasses to know that this is a Ugandan side or this is a Kenyan side or this is a Tanzanian side. So you end up crashing, among the countries and the fishermen of different countries.
Ukishika watu, mnapigwa, mnateswa, mnataka mule samaki mbichi, mnalala kwa mtumbi kama hii boti yetu tunaona inatoa maji, wanaweza kukwambia lala kwa hiyo maji ambayo yako kwa boti yenu, au inui kichwa mpaka ambapo watakapowapeleka nje.
If Kenya are not good people, we can decide to catch these fish when they are very small. We catch them if they are, when they are very small. We deal with them. Then we wait another term. Then they breed. Then we catch those small ones. The lake will be no fish. The lake will be without fish.
If it continues at that rate, with a lot of dams construction taking place, with a lot of climate change and a lot of global warming, continuing, a lot of clearing the forests and wetlands, then 20, 25, 30 years, you have no lake. and some of us will still be living. So we shall live to witness that calamity.
Joining me is Alex Stonehill, one of the journalists who made that film. Hi, Alex, and welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So what's behind the dramatic drop in water levels?
On Lake Victoria, we've seen kind of a combination of factors, one of which is just a lessened amount of rainfall in the Lake Victoria Basin, and that accounts for about half of the drop in water levels. And the other factor is hydroelectric dams at the source of the Nile, where it flows out of Lake Victoria and then down towards Sudan and Egypt. New dam projects there have been constructed by the Ugandan government and the World Bank, and those dams are running a lot of water out of the lake, basically, to produce more electricity. You know, they need to run more water out of the lake.
And what kind of impact is this having on the lives of people who rely on Lake Victoria for their livelihoods?
Well, a lot of the fishermen that we talk to, both in Kenya and on the Ugandan side of the lake, and I assume in Tanzania as well, are just seeing that the breeding grounds for the fish that they had fished previously are now dried up. So the number of fish that are there has been lessened, and they've found themselves having to travel further out, and sometimes the Kenyan fishermen even have to travel to the Ugandan side of the lake, and have encountered some conflict there with Ugandan authorities and Ugandan fishermen. So that's one example.
And what brought you to the topic of water? What inspired you to make this film?
Well, we started looking to do a project in East Africa, and it just sort of jumped out as a lot of the different kind of scattered stories that we were seeing. A lot of them appeared to have water elements, and it was kind of something that nobody had approached from a cohesive perspective, that all of these different things, you know, from these lake levels lowering to conflict based on drought, there was all these water elements there.
And what is the rest of the world doing to tackle the issue of water scarcity in East Africa?
There are people doing really good work to try and help. But on a broader policy level, you know, we're now just starting to see that people are taking notice of this as a crisis, you know, as big as the AIDS crisis, or as big as, you know, world poverty in general.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at a clip from that film which shows us where this may all be headed.
አገሩ ያው የሶማሊያ ሀገር ቆላ ነው። ከ186ቱ አርብቶ አደር ነው። አገሩ ደግሞ ቆላ ነው። ድርቅ ይበዛል፣ ዝናብ ማነስ ይበዛል። ዝናብ ወዳለበት፣ ሳር ወዳለበት፣ ውሃ ወዳለበት የሚዞር አሁን ባለንበት አሁን ራሱ አለ እየጨመረ እየመጣ ነው። አንዳንድ ቦታዎች ውሃ እየጠፉ ነው። አሁንም ችግር አለ። የሚገልጸው ድሮ ምንጫቸው የማይደርቁ ኤላዎች፣ ድሮ ወንዝ ውሃ ደርቆ መቆፈር የማያስፈልግ ዝም ብሎ ውሃ የሚሄደው አሁን ውሃው እያለቀ እንደ ዳዋ አይነት ይቆፈራል። በቃ ይሄ ድሮ አልነበረም እንደ አይነቱ።
Plus la roba tanu bona karni de haja bati ni de obi origine sun bu yolin avanteri bu yalam chala robere lafta bu yalam chala ori la suni laftan de wal bul bade sunran wada
For the Thai conflict, for instance, or Guji, it's resource-based conflict due to water.
yangu River 32. Shida gani? Zamani iko bese chapa mingi, saa hakuna, na watu mingi na kufa Guji. Sasa na biga na Guji. Ndio, bora na nakufa. Bora na mingi nakufa. Iko shida maji. Watu Guji bora na watu 26 mimi najua naona bana.
አዎ ያው አገራችን በዚህ በደርጉ ጊዜ ወይም በትግሉ ላይ የነበረው የዚህ ሁኔታ ወይም ከብቴን ከአንበሳ ከጅብ ሊጠብቅ በሚል ሁኔታ አለ መሳሪያ በህዝብ እጅ አለ። ይሄ ደግሞ መጣላት ሲመጣ ጉዳት ያመጣል።
So, Alex, those images that we just saw seem so remote to us, yet in your reporting, you suggest that these brewing conflicts over water are somehow linked to our action, or rather inaction. Talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Well, sadly, despite the fact that these are people living in a very remote area, and they're doing very little to contribute to climate change and global warming, they're some of the first people who are suffering from it, it looks like. So with the decline in rain there, that's bringing a lot of different people, putting a lot of stress on the water resources that they do have and bringing people into conflict.
And water scarcity also means that millions of women and children, mostly women and children, spend so much time hauling water around. What kind of impact does that have on their livelihoods and on the economy as well?
Well, just the simple fact that, as you said, millions of women are spending huge portions of their time just going to gather water and bring it back to their families wherever they live. Obviously, that's time that they could be spending, in other economic activities, starting small businesses, going to school. I mean, a lot of them are really young, and so they're missing time from school. And all of that added up, all of that kind of lost labor is basically equivalent to the amount of money that we send in aid to Africa each year. So it's a huge amount of time and energy lost.
And these issues were just presented at 24 schools and universities around the United States. And in fact, we have a question from a student in Seattle. Let's listen in.
My name is Brahani Tisfahun. I'm 17 years old and I go to Highline High School in Burien. My question that I would like to ask you is, how has climate change and global warming worsened the issue of water scarcity in Eastern Africa?
That's a good question that we've gotten a lot. It appears that in places that already were very water stressed, like southern Ethiopia and those pastoralist regions, they've seen successive years of drought that have just been increasing. And it's hard to say exactly how much of that is related to climate change or not, but it really appears that it is. Unfortunately, that's one of those things that even with the increased severity of hurricane cycles in the U.S., that's another thing that is probably related to climate change, but we don't fully know. But it's my suspicion from what I saw that climate change is definitely, specifically drought, is definitely contributing to these problems, from Lake Victoria to these pastoralist regions.
What other kinds of responses did you get?
Well, it was impressive because a lot of the responses from students were initially very, first very shocked, but then also very compassionate and very solutions oriented. The students would always kind of say, well, can't we do this? Can't we do that? How can we solve this? So they're obviously looking to the future and kind of accepting these problems as things that they're going to have to deal with as they get older.
Thanks very much for joining us, Alex.
Thank you.
And you can find out much more about this topic online. Think of this broadcast as your window on this fascinating and rich world of digital information. Next up, an author who's tackling another looming water issue, sanitation. But first, we asked students around the world to tell us what water means to them. Here's what students from the Olympic School in Nairobi in Kenya posted to the Water Wars website.
My name is Ruth Muige, grade 7, Olympic Primary School. The water situation in our school is that at times there is no water and pupils have to suffer from getting water because there are not many taps. Pupils fight a lot, pushing each other, throwing each other. The water is not enough.
My name is Lilian Idagiza. I'm in grade 10. Kibera is the second largest slum in the world. The water is not much because sometimes you have to travel for at least 4 to 5 kilometers in search of water. I can blame the Ministry of Water for that because sometimes there is no water at all in Kibera. So we are forced to go to the estates to borrow water from the schools, and sometimes that water is contaminated. When you find it, it is very dirty, but we just have to use it because we cannot do without it.
My name is Areri Kodwol. I'm grade 10. Mostly in Kibera you find that there's water, but where the water pipes pass through the sewage, which give waterborne diseases.
My name is Sarah Elizabeth Adhiambo. I'm in grade 9. I felt fever. I was taken to St. Mary's Hospital. They checked and they found that I was suffering from typhoid. So due to water situation in school, I suffered from that disease.
Now to a subject that is both superbly indelicate and morally imperative: sanitation. Nearly half of the world's population doesn't have access to clean water, resulting in 5 million deaths a year. Bodily waste is as natural as breathing, but yet somehow taboo. Not to our next guest, who has just written a book about it, and I'm happy to be joined by Rose George, author of The Big Necessity, The Unmentionable World of Human Waste and Why It Matters. Rose, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So what led you to wade around, quite literally, I suppose, in this most taboo of subjects, and what did you turn up?
Well, the reason I began was I came across a character called Dr. Pathak, who is an Indian Brahmin who has spent his life trying to liberate India's untouchables, whose job is to clean latrines with their bare hands. And he taught me two things. One, the stunning statistics about sanitation, which is 2.6 billion people without any sanitation whatsoever, so not even a basic latrine. And the other thing he taught me was that sanitation can be made entertaining, and that's how to capture people's attention. So to that end, he has set up the world's only international museum of toilets in Delhi, and he tries to make it make his job memorable and more accessible.
You know, most of us are probably familiar with how human waste is a major health problem in developing countries, but it's also an issue for richer nations. Talk a little bit about why we should be concerned.
Well, we have what we assume is a solution in the Western world, which it has indeed been a fantastic medical advancement, which is the flush toilet and the sewer system, which was an enormous public health boon in the mid-19th century, cut down cholera and all sorts of nasty communicable diseases. However, this solution could do with some evolution. It's under pressure from population growth. It costs a lot of money. And some people do question the wisdom of our system, which involves taking clean drinking water, which is an increasingly precious resource, even in somewhere like the United States, throwing dirt into it practically and then spending a fortune cleaning it again. They do ask the question whether there is a better way of doing things.
Is there a better way of doing things?
There are all sorts of solutions and innovations around the world, in the developed and developing world, and there is a movement called Ecological Sanitation, which involves, you can have dry toilets, composting toilets, which uses human waste, which needn't be waste, uses it as fertilizer. This is very popular in China, for example. They've been using that for 4,000 years, and that's why some say that's why their agriculture is still very healthy. This is difficult in urban areas, but it can be done, and there is a movement in some rural areas in the Western world, in Sweden and Europe, who are looking at this ecological sanitation, trying to make a more sustainable system.
Mm-hmm. So apart from coming up with some solutions, which you obviously found along the way, I mean, what sort of surprised or startled you the most in terms of, you know, which countries are perhaps more at risk in terms of the infrastructure of the sewer system?
Well, the problem around the world is not whether there is a sewer system or not. It's simply that there is nothing whatsoever. So obviously, in India, where there is the best and the worst of sanitation, there are some amazing sanitation activists like Dr. Pathak, but there is also an incredible problem with open defecation, which is what it sounds like is people really have nothing, and they're using what they have to hand, which is generally a roadside or a bush, This is incredibly dangerous in public health terms, and diarrhea kills a child every 15 seconds, and we in the West think of diarrhea as something we get from a bad takeout meal or something, but it's cutting a swathe through children throughout the developing world. It's really indefensible that this is still going on.
And one of the other startling statistics that you turned up was also from India, where 60,000 people shared 10 toilets in a slum.
Indeed, I visited several slums in India, and they're the lucky ones, the ones with even one toilet block between 40,000 or 60,000 people. In practice, they really have nothing at all. But again, there are some interesting initiatives, some local non-profit organizations in India trying to build public toilet blocks, trying to encourage community organizations so people come together to build their own toilet blocks so they get a sense of ownership and pride, and that's what keeps it clean and keeps it well maintained.
And you know, in your book you talk about the struggle to get sanitation included in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, and you point out that if those goals are going to be met by the deadline, it would require constructing one toilet every second, every 24 hours. Well, what went wrong?
Well, sanitation has just been neglected for so long. It's a conversational taboo. That doesn't help matters. People don't want to talk about it. In the English language, we have no nice neutral word that we can use to talk about this subject. So I think this has translated into a lack of political will and funding all across the board in states and in non-governmental organizations. I think things are beginning to change now, and it was included in the Millennium Development Goals, which is great. But it is also the most off-track Millennium Development Goal as of today. So clearly there is still much to be done.
I want to go to our interactive site for a question from one of the students in the Pulitzer Center Gateway program, who of course have been using the Water Wars website in classrooms worldwide. And here's a question from Natalie Mackey in Seattle.
My name's Natalie Mackey. I'm 15 years old and I attend Chief Sealth High School in Seattle, Washington. Are there water issues in America like there are in Africa and other parts of the world like we've heard about?
So what do you say to Natalie's question?
Well, obviously in the US, you don't have, for example, women and children trekking for hours every day to fetch water. But that said, water scarcity and water stress is an issue in America. And in fact, in California, which does have problems with water, there is now an interesting initiative which may not appeal to everybody to clean sewage effluent and to use the latest technology and use it as drinking water because there are such problems. And if that does sound icky for some people, let's remember that that's what NASA has to do on space shuttles and on the space station, because they can't transport water all the way up there, so they have to use what they have, and they have no problems with it. And I think this is going to be more and more popular as a solution in the years to come.
Rose George, thank you very much for joining us on the program, and good luck with your book.
Thank you.
And you can go to waterwars.pulitzergateway.org and sign up for a live Q&A chat with Rose George. And while you're there, you can watch and read stories and share your thoughts about this vital issue. That is it for this week. I'm Daljit Dhaliwal for Foreign Exchange, and we leave you this week with a poignant photo essay about water from Kibera, Nairobi. Goodbye.
Kumaanisha neza mpanisha kabig panisha juu ya kitanda cheze kama gita ni lazima nimeze Viagra kajua kali mkono zangu zaniwasha sana nashindwa nashika manzi nchi gani hapa sasa Nairobi au Dar es Salaam wote tuwapasasa lolo bintu wa bongo ambeba mabishungi lazima ndazama ndani nishamaliza mitungi Jumae alisema inaniuma sana chungi ndogo ni tamu sana
Foreign Exchange welcomes your feedback. Log on to foreignexchange.tv and send us your comments. You can also view episodes as streaming video and read the transcripts online. This program is made possible through the generous support of the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, making grants to promote international understanding and address the root causes of global poverty.